many webinars that we hope to host, keep on hosting as part of our user experience enhancing sessions. We want everyone to understand the capabilities of Entution, to see what you can do with Entution, because honestly, the sky is the limit, and I think there's a lot that we all can learn. Now, today, I think we all know that everyone that we're going on with mastering the art of supply chain. It's something that a lot of people have requested, and we thought that would be the best subject to start off with. Um, we have Manupriya Vijayanga with us. He's our head of project delivery. He's been with us for quite a while, so there's no better person to learn this from than Manu. Um, and yeah, I think I better hand it over to Manu. Manu?
Yeah, thanks, Dinner. Hope I'm audible. Dinner, you can hear me, and everybody else?
Yeah, loud and clear,
Okay,
Manu.
right, okay. So good afternoon to everyone. Like Dinner said, this is the first of many webinars that we are planning to host in the future, actually to make awareness about the product and the features that, sometimes you're already a user of our Entution platform, but you should stick to the usual practices you do, and we provide new features and enhancements. So from one perspective, that will basically like educate you on what we have done new as well, and also for any potential buyer or someone who's looking into ERPs also can see what are the capabilities of the solution that we're offering in terms of the Entution platform. So without further ado, I'll go into the areas that we're going to actually go through today. It's relating to the supply chain efficiency. So what I'll be going through is how you can sort of make your whole supply chain process and the planning process more efficient with the functionalities and the features that are available on the platform, and how you can utilize them in a more effective way. And also maybe some of you have not or like not seen, or not you have not you been using these functionalities as well. So let me share the screen and take you through the process on the actual system that I'm going to explain along with it. Right. So hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yeah, perfect, Manu.
Yeah. Okay. So for anybody who has not actually seen Entution, this is the landing page of the platform that you're gonna first see once you log into the system. So um, this is like a very comprehensive solution. So we'll stick to what we are focusing on today within this planned time limit. So when it comes to supply chain and efficiency that you're going to generate out of it, one of the key aspects is on an ERP platform is configuring your products and configuring the parameters related to your supply chain process properly. Like for example, you have some key elements related to the supply chain process. The first coming up would be how you set up your product information. So there we have our product information page, which is going to be the master list for the products. So I'm just going to take a simple product as an example. So when you take a particular product, you input the relevant parameters and details associated with it. But the most important aspects of this related to uh, generating more efficiency out of your supply chain process is one, being alerted on what is the current status of your product or the on-hand situation of your uh, product availability. So in order to go there in the system, first of all, you have to configure the products properly. So we have these parameters within the product information called maximum stock level, safety level, reorder quantity, and tolerance as such. So these particular fields will help you quite a lot in terms of generating a greater efficiency, because these are the constraints that any company or any industry uses to plan their procurement process. For example, maximum level means the maximum inventory level of that particular item that you're going to hold in your warehouse. So for example, we can say if you go above this limit and your stock keeping uh, more than this amount, that means you're overstocked, right? So system is capable of alerting you that you're overstocking a particular item, incurring an exceptional cost, right? Because overstocking would sometimes lead to will definitely lead to an added cost, but it also may lead to, for example, if the items have expiry or if they are perishable items, then definitely you're going to be at a loss. So what the maximum level indicates is your max stock keeping level. So if you want to have a system alert configured to prevent you from overstocking, this is a function that you can use along with our notification and email sending facility, which is common across any functionality on the system. The other important aspect is the safety level. So safety level and the reorder level basically goes hand in hand. So safety level is pretty much like a buffer stock level, right? So when you reach the safety level, you should know that you should be on alert for this particular product, right? So for example, let's say your shipment time or the lead time of purchasing the particular product is quite high, then you need to order the product in advance, right? If you are importing, for example, let's say it takes 90 days, so you should order before 90 days, well before 90 days, to make sure that you have enough stock when it comes to catering to your sales or catering to your production processes. So the safety level is an indicator again that you can be alerted on once a product quantity level reaches that particular level. Then, of course, the reorder level, that's a critical point. Reorder level in the sense that's where any company decides to reorder the items. So the reordering process is also systemized here. Again, you can be, for example, the system can alert you on a daily basis of the products that actually has gone to the level of reordering. So based on it, you can initiate your procurement process. You can initiate it looking at an alert or an email. Also, there is a system function called supply planning, which I'll be taking you through a little bit later. That's going to facilitate for you guys to place your purchases through the system itself, looking at these parameters. So these four parameters actually is what the key areas in terms of planning your procurement cycles, right? And then, of course, there are scenarios like where you place the order for a particular quantity, but sometimes the supplier, the quantity that is sent by the supplier, differs a little bit. Let's say, for example, let's take a perishable item or an item which is measured in kilograms or so, right? So let's say you ordered 100 kilograms of a particular, let's say, a vegetable or something. But when it comes to through your seller to the actual goods receiving point, since these commodities vary in terms of the weight when it comes to weighing actually, plus sometimes there are commodities where there is a weight loss. And there's some scenarios that also carry the weight gain. For example, like something that is provided frozen, like let's say meat products or fish sometimes, you get the ice weight as well. So uh, there what the system allows is for you to have something called a tolerance percentage. So what the tolerance allows is, this is actually something that you can control as well. If you know the nature of the product, you as the company, you have an idea that of course, let's say the weight deviates maybe 10% up and down. So you can set up a tolerance percentage here. And what it does is it allows you your storekeepers to take in shipments within that tolerance limit, right? So you can even put approvals. So it doesn't block the warehouse user just because there's a weight change or in such a scenario. So that's basically what the tolerance setup is there for. Um, and then the other aspects I want to highlight here is actually related to how you uh, plan the product procurement. For example, for every product, sometimes you can have multiple suppliers. So in the product master itself, you have the facility for you to add who are the qualified suppliers that I can procure these items from, right? And then you can even set up like again parameters which is going to help your supply planning process, like MOQ, EOQ, that's minimum order quantity, economic order quantity, and the lead days by supplier, because sometimes where you purchase from is also going to have an impact. For example, one supplier can give you the items maybe in 20 days, the other one takes 25 or 30 days. So you can even rate your suppliers, you can put the best prices for them. The price is basically the best prices quoted by the supplier. So this is also going to help you in terms of the planning process. This also acts as a secondary mapping point for the uh, product and the vendor mapping, right? These are some of the basic setup areas that's mandatory for you to proceed forward uh, properly, because you need to have your master set up properly before you basically look at the results from the ERP. Because whatever you set up as a masters is ultimately going to be impacting your end results. So make sure everything is accurate and correct at the ground level for the masters, and then what you expect as your outputs would also reflect the same level of accuracy. So from here, what I will do is I'll take you through the forms that's gonna sort of like give you an idea in terms of how the planning process is going to be impacted. So if I take the general procurement process of the system, so I'm not gonna take a long time on these. I'll just quickly run through these areas because I just want to give you a background of how the procurement flow works in the system before I go to the planning part as well. So I'll just go to the procurement process. So there, like you may have already experienced, we have multiple ways that allows you to do procurement. So if I take a simple explanation here on the number 3 journey, that's purchase order, inbound shipment, which is at the GRN, and the purchase invoice. So a 3-step simple procurement process, PO, GRN, invoice. So um, at any given time, you may have already placed certain purchase orders, right? Some purchase orders you may have placed, and then still the goods may not have been delivered. Some maybe the goods are delivered, so they can be in different stages within the process, right? So that's also another thing that you can actually see on the system. If you take a particular transaction in the whole process, from here you can see actually to what extent the process is completed. So if this PO has completed the inbound shipment or the GRN, then this bar would be filling up to a particular percentage. If it's like fully received, then it'll be 100%. Maybe it's partially received, then it will have an apportionment completion basis. So like this, the invoicing and the payment. So you can get an idea by just looking at one point of this process to see where things are in terms of the particular journey, right? Similar manner, you have the sales process as well. So I'm again, like my focus here is the planning. So I'm just gonna run a very quick uh, run through with the most basic sales and the procurement process. Because I need to give a little bit of background before I go to the planning. So the sales also, again, the similar practice, right? We have multiple ways where you can do a sales process. You can start with the sales order. You have the sales invoicing process, and then you have the dispatch process, right? Those are the most three basic and common steps. So again, there will be orders placed for future dates, and there will be procurement related transactions placed for different points when you take a particular instance of your organization. So the important thing here is the procurement head or the procurement planner needs to have an idea of where things are with respect to all these orders, because there'll be thousands of orders or transactions that will be processing at a time, at a time period, with numerous purchases, sales, and everything going on. So that's where actually this particular form comes up, right? Which is called supply planning. So what the purpose of the supply planning tool here actually is, to get all that data together to one point and present a very concise and a very effective screen for the person in charge to have an idea of all that's going related to the procurement process and the procurement planning. So from here, the person will be able to see the total list of the products that are eligible to be purchased, right? And they'll also see how much you have at the given moment in terms of the quantity, and you can see the required demand of of the items for your future dates. So you can view this actually on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or as well as a monthly basis. So if I apply the week filter, then you're going to see the weekly breakdown of the same idea. And then you have the monthly as well, right? So you'll see from here, the person who is in charge of planning, along with the notification and the email facilities I told you earlier, will have quite a bit of tools in their hands to see what needs to be done exactly and when the action needs to be taken. Because the most important point in terms of any particular business or an operation, one, you need to know the information, you need to have the data, and the other thing is you need to take the respective action at the correct time. You can't wait on the data, you can't sit on the data as well. You need to make sure that your decisions are effective as well. So this is the first level of overview where you can see the quantity you have and the requirements you have for the future. And also there's a color indicator in front of the product, which is also giving a visual indication of for whether this is I would say in a green zone or in a critical zone, right? I'll take a specific example. So you can even filter and see as well. So if I take this particular example, right? The date here, meaning the due date, is indicating the next immediate due date for either a sales or either a production or a consumption when the particular item is required on at the closest date, right? And the available quantity as of today and for the future dates. So as you can see, the quantity available is not actually enough to cater. It's on a yellow color highlight, which is indicating that you need to take certain action on this particular product. So this is just a high level of information what you're seeing. So you know that, okay, I need to do something about it. Now what you can do is you can click on the product and then it's gonna show up another window. So what this actually does is uh, here you can see actually a breakdown of all the items in terms of the usage of items uh, in different areas. For example, you have the goods in transit, and also in terms of the demand, you have sales and you have internal. So if I interpret this, what is meant here is goods in transit means that is actually in transit when it comes to procuring the item. And then in terms of the demand basis, you have sales and internal. So this is basically external demand and internal demand. So anything that is coming via sales, you will see a sales demand. So further to this here, now I have a backlog of, so whatever that's backlog means, that is pending and not delivered. So you can also get an indication on that. It's like the carried forward balance. And on October, I have this value. And then if I click on this, it's going to indicate to me the actual order numbers where this value materializes from. And internal is basically related to the internal consumptions that's mostly used either for production or even assembly or even just consumables. And then we have the supply. So supply here again has two aspects to it, purchase and production. So purchase is, so these are actually the two sources of supplying this particular item. So purchasing means you directly procure it. Production means you produce the item. So whatever that is planned to cover your demand in terms of these two supply sources, you will see again on the relevant date. Let's say, for example, you have a purchase order placed for the month of October, you will get the value here. You have a production order which is scheduled to start on October, you will get the production value here. So you will know that in order to cover this requirement, whether you have already taken some action. So if you have not taken a particular action, then of course you need to take an action, right? So as you can see here, there's another widget facility where, you know, it allows you from the same screen itself for you to go to these sources. So let's say, okay, so here in this particular instance, I have a requirement of 500 to be sold in October, but I don't have the required items to fulfill that. So I have three scenarios here. So internal order means that's basically generating based on the production process. If I'm going to procure this directly, I can click on the purchase order and then it will direct me to the purchase order creating process. process or the point, then you can proceed from the purchasing part of it. And then the other scenario is purchase requisition. So of course, I just showed you the purchase process starting from the purchase order, which is like the most basic thing. But before the purchase order, we have purchase requisition, and then sometimes if the user is required to call for quotations, we have the request for quotation calling process as well. So those are extensions to the general procurement process. So based on your relevant procurement process, you can cover the procedure via here. So the idea behind this is for the procurement manager or the centralized procurement person to have all the tools in hand to make sure that you order the items in time and make sure that you have everything in hand by the time you're required to deliver the item, right? So you can actually view this based on a warehouse. You can actually do this. You can look at specific products as well, right? So according to the criteria, you can use this. And there's an actually interesting fact called forecast based. So this we will actually cover on maybe a different session related to forecasting, because what I've talked so far is based on actual data, based on your actual sales to be delivered and actual production maybe to be covered. You need to back calculate and procure the related items for the planning. But in an actual context, your company would also depend on forecasting of your sales and production. So like the actuals, we have a way to forecast the sales, and then that's also another source. So you can tick on this, and then you can incorporate and run this, which is gonna then its system is also going to consider what you have forecasted as your expected sales as well, rather than the actual sales. So that's also another criteria that's applicable here, and then again will be very valuable to any organization. So this is one aspect of the planning process. So I believe like you can also get understand like how easy it would be for actually for someone to utilize this and know where things are in terms of their procurement and the inventory planning process. So the form I just explained to you can be found in the procurement module under supply plan procedure. Then there's another one which is called purchase planner. So basically this is sort of like, let's say, a little bit of a lower version of the supply plan, but it serves a little bit of a different purpose as well. So what this does is you can run this again based on a particular warehouse, or else based on a particular product or a vendor. So for this to actually work effectively, you need to the best scenario is you need to have suppliers mapped for your products, like from which suppliers we are qualified to buy, like that. So for example, once I do this, this is going to indicate you the items that are qualified to be purchased from this particular supplier. So I selected one of my warehouses, and then I have selected SPC as my supplier, and then I can see 3 items on the warehouse where SPC is my qualified supplier. And here you can see again a different set of information. You can see the reorder level of that particular item, and the economic order quantity, and also what is the on-hand quantity that you have right now. So these all are parameters which you set up on the product master, like I showed you at the very beginning. And then on the next 3 columns, you will be able to see the pending GRN quantity, drafted PO quantity and the purchase order quantity that actually that you have placed. So this actually, like I said, from the supply planning to coming to the purchase planner, this is a sort of like a toned down version of the supply plan. This only covers the purchasing aspect of it. Supply plan had your demand-based procurement. This allows you to plan the procurement based on your procurement parameters and the purchases that you have already placed so far. So here, if you're using this facility, you'll be able to see the requirement and what's in transit, that's the pending GRN, and what POs you have drafted so far, and the POs that you want to draft. So it's again, you can select the particular items here. And once you decide, okay, I'm gonna start my procurement process based on this data. So I can click on that action and select the items that I want to go through. And I can go through my standard procurement process, which is just going to take you through the relevant journey. The important criteria again here is the information that's going to be available for your users to start your procurement cycles or the procurement process. So that's the supply planning process, right? And then I showed you at the very beginning on the product information how you set up all those parameters, like the reorder, safety levels, and all that. So we have a mechanism where we can set up the notifications for those under your system administration panel. So I mean, like, not all users will have access to this, but you will have a system administrator appointed within your company. So they will basically have the access for this. So under administration, there will be a function called system policy configuration. So within these, we have email template policies that's gonna assist you to get those notifications and configure those notifications, right? So for example, I'll show the reorder level 1. So here you have a tile called product reorder level notification. So through this, your administrator can actually set up who needs to be alerted as an email against the reorder notification. So if I explain this a little bit further, let's say I can select the user from here. You'll get the email address of the user, and then I can activate this. Once this is activated, the system will daily basis, issue a email at the day end or the month end, or you can configure that as well with the items that are due to be reordered. So if you want to, you can actually go through the setup here, and then you can schedule the frequency of these notifications as well. So I can have hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, like that, which is basically gonna help you to configure like how you want to be alerted. Sometimes having daily emails might be not practical, so you can actually set it up maybe for a weekly basis. That's up to you to decide. So that's where we set up the alerting facilities for this, right? So there's one more aspect or area that I actually want to take into this consideration, which is the supplier agreement process. So I just skipping a little bit on the areas which are covered by general procurement practices like the PO, GRN, and all that, because those are common areas. So this is also gonna play a part in terms of your planning procedures. So for example, let's say you have agreement with suppliers. Of course, you will have agreements with suppliers running for certain durations based on different criteria. For example, you will have a product list which has an agreement with a supplier uh, to maybe provide that a specific rate for a period of time. You can fix the price and say for 6 years you're going to purchase this item for a fixed price. Or let's say maybe for a particular period, we're going to allow you a discount of this much for this particular items, right? Um, so like that, here you can actually configure your agreement, right? You can have agreement categories, you can have an expiry date for the agreement. Sometimes you can have a foreign currency based agreement as well, right? And the validity period of the agreement. So validity period basically in the sense, now we have basically three steps in the procurement process: the ordering, receiving, and then the invoicing. So upon which dates or which transaction date you want to validate the agreement, that's what's mentioned here on the ordering, invoicing, and the shipping part of it. So you can get the agreement effective period and whether the agreement is based on the quantity or a value-based agreement. Then you can set up and select who the vendor is for the particular agreement, right? And of course, then you go here and then you can set up the shipping, the payment policies and all that, right? And then you come to the most important part for the product details. So here you can select what are the products that will be valid for your agreement with the particular vendor. And here you can set up fixed pricings, discounts, and also sometimes there may be, especially in case of the agreements, you will have a minimum order quantity, uh, minimum and maximum, more than max also, you will have a minimum order quantity. In most cases, let's say you go to an agreement with a supplier for your products, the supplier puts a condition, your minimum order quantity is this much. So you can set these parameters up, right? And you can set up the max order quantity as well. That will come into play. For example, if the supplier is allowing you a discount, it'll be up to only a particular quantity. So like that, you can set this thing, the whole agreement up, and then um, even to the level of if there are any additional charges like transportation, labor clearing, these also you can set up as added charges for these agreement. And when you do your procurement process, you can select an agreement against the purchase order. Then what it does is from the system itself, all the parameters you set up for the agreement are automatically going to be validated against the purchase order that's placed by the user, right? For example, let's say the agreed price is 100 rupees per unit, and then your purchase order, you will have that validation, but you will not be able to change the pricing, right? So everything will be binded, all the purchases done against the agreement will be binded by that particular agreement, covering the parameters of the agreed conditions. So that's also another part of having your procurement process streamlined, because everybody is going to be using the POGRN functionalities like day-to-day transactions, but there are functionalities like the planning tools that I showed you earlier, plus then these sort of functionalities where you can set up the agreements and policies, which is, once you set these up, you don't want to worry again about the data entered by the user, whether there'll be a mistake or anything, because everything that you set up as the agreement will be validated through the system itself, right? So those kind of things would, like enhance the experience on the ERP, on what you're using as the functionalities, plus those will add a value to your day-to-day operations as well, in terms of minimizing errors, plus minimizing sometimes data entry as well, because using the especially the planning tools, you will be able to make sure that you're maintaining your inventory levels at the most optimum point, even without overstocking or understocking. making sure the things are covered with respect to all the future demand. Right. So those are the key points that we had in mind in terms of sharing with you guys, sharing with our clients and maybe potential clients as well. Just a few key areas here because within the time limit, these are going to be um, sort of like 1 hour, 45-minute short webinars because we can't put quite huge lot of functionalities or the information out in a short time as well, or we can't actually exceed for a long time as well because then that's gonna be like ineffective for the listeners as well. So in terms of our focus point today, in terms of how you can actually utilize the ERP functionalities in terms of using your supply chain management process more effectively. Those are three tools that we are going to highlight and introduce to you in terms of the planning and in terms of setting up policies and agreements to be made aware from the system and to have your processes controlled by the system. Like I said earlier, it's about the key factor is about knowing what uh, needs to be done actually, and then also acting upon it as well. So if you guys have any questions related to the areas we just went through, I'll be happy to assist. And also we'll have the Nura and Divya here as well. So over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So like Manu mentioned, if you guys have any questions, do ask, press the raise hands button, and we'll unmute you and you can ask your questions. So if there's anyone, or you can also drop a message on the chat with your question and we'll get to it.
Just to add up, like if you feel that the features which we explained would be of interest to you later onwards, you can always reach our support team as well as your relevant account managers or the sales teams as well. For those who are interested later onwards.
Yes. So I will ask Manu a question that we had gotten from the registrations. Um, Let me see. All right, Manu. So someone had asked that they would like to see more about platforms or tools related to consolidate supply chain related news and updates. Is that something?
Yes, so actually that's just to answer that particular question. So what we have covered is actually the consolidated supply
Amazing.
chain process. So because on the supply plan itself, you saw that it consolidates data from the sales department to the production department and all across the organization covering the overall demand. And then it's pushing to the procurement teams in a consolidated perspective.
Okay. Um, Since we don't seem to have a lot of questions, I think we could wrap up this webinar. Before everyone leaves, I just have one little question to ask you all. What would you like to see us do? What topic you would like to see us cover in future webinars? That would be very helpful to us and also helpful to you because that would help you learn what you want to. So if you could just drop down what you'd like to learn in future webinars, what areas you'd like us to cover, I can talk to Manu and we can arrange that for our upcoming webinars. Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Manu, thank you so much for, enlightening all of us on this topic. There's a lot to learn, a lot more webinars to come in the future. We thank everyone who attended. We hope to see you soon. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys as well.